based out of?
Oh, I'm based in northwest Spain in Galicia.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. My family's from sort of the Pamplona area originally.
All right. Okay. Great. So, the first thing I wanna ask you is why have you decided to run for the state senate?
Sure. Thank you, Lorena. There's a couple of reasons. In my district, which is coastal Los Angeles County, there's multiple communities, a lot of continuity amongst those communities on issues. And as I was sort of looking at um, the representation in our community, I recognized that there was a big portion of our district that wouldn't be represented in the campaign. They wouldn't have voice in the campaign, which is sort of the
Yeah.
southern part of that district. And so uh, I chose to step forward for that reason. But more importantly, I spent several years as a political science teacher, adjunct of El Camino College, as well as University of Southern California. And in those experiences, taught a number of students and always aspired to engage young people in the political process. And given
Yeah,
sort of the
that's great.
state, and given the state of certainly American and national affairs, and the divisiveness that you see often, in the news today, felt it was important to step forward to demonstrate that, we can actually work together to get things done. I did it as a local elected for 10 years and wanted to show that we could also do that, as a state.
Yeah. Well, I studied political science. So so it's great. It's nice that you want to get young people into politics. Well, what are the issues that you want to prioritize?
Yes, I mean, there are several issues, but I would say public safety, quality of life, our economy, and then really two key, so I'll call them sort of safety net areas, but public investment in public education, and then finally sort of access to healthcare. And all
Yeah.
five of those are important. All five of those, through my professional career or my community service, I've been able to impact change at some level. And all five of those are important to me. I'm certainly happy to go into any specific one.
Yeah, healthcare and education would be great. So we can start by, the social policy areas that you wanna what are the things you want to do on those areas?
Sure. Sort of related to public health. So right now I'm a chief operating officer for a public health company. I'd spent, almost 20 years in leadership as an executive across different health systems as well as
Yeah.
nonprofits that have delivered care. So it's a passion topic for me. And given the bills from last year and the cuts in national contributions to states when it comes to Medicaid, um, we have to embrace as a state and the state of California for the support of our
Yeah.
communities in maintaining healthcare access. And so, how do you do more, or at least maintain, when you've got less resource? Is kind of the question of
Yeah.
this time. And there are bright spots, which is, I fundamentally believe that American healthcare needs to methodically work towards more public health education and preventative care investment. There are lots
Yeah.
of examples of programs over the last, particularly 15 years, that have, aspired to drive change in that regard and, reduce costs of care but improve quality. So that's fundamentally what I think needs to happen. Uh,
Yeah.
is we need to methodically do that, and there are programs that we, for example, in California that exist for the last couple of years called CalAIM programs. These efforts to sort of
Yeah.
integrate integrate what would be perceived as sort of traditional medical care with social, wraparound social services and support, because
Yeah.
oftentimes our biggest cost in healthcare is associated with the highest acuity as well as people that have, a lot of intersectionality of psychosocial issues in addition to
Yeah,
the medical
they go
issues.
together. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and as I said, as my role as a CEO today, we do a lot of outreach. We go into homeless encampments. I've seen it firsthand. Where the mental health crisis is in the community, and how that can compound with levels of acuity and chronic disease in such a way as to cost the American healthcare
Yeah.
taxpayer lots of money, and also just not be a good overall system. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I think we
Yeah.
can, as a state, create an investment pattern towards the things I mentioned, prevention, particularly in public health education, which is totally underinvested, by the way, and a lot cheaper to do. And if we do that
Yeah.
right, I think we can start to move the needle, and then and do that ideally while maintaining healthcare access for all people. So that's a lofty goal, but it's possible. And
Yeah.
other countries give us some hope too, that we can sort of think about our system and shift the paradigm in our system even gradually to invest
Yeah.
in that way. And again, have improvements in the system, but either bend the cost curve at the very least, or stabilize the cost curve of
Yeah.
healthcare. Right.
All right, great. What measures do you want to implement in terms of economic policy? What do you want to do to support economic growth and small businesses, of course?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, the government doesn't solve all issues, communities do, but I do believe the
Yeah.
government can be a meaningful catalyst for communities, particularly individuals. So, I would say I'll start at the kind of the micro, but making sure that there's pathways for individuals, especially more economically disadvantaged individuals in our communities across California and Los Angeles County
Yeah.
uniquely. If we do that well, then we're creating pathways for kids, the K through 12 system, to go through the community college system and through our California, our state system, and get a meaningful university degree or get technical training. So I believe in both, vocational the training pathways being tightened, as well as ensuring that our kids in our communities have access to good public education options. So
Yeah.
to sort of align them with current and future jobs. And so I think government can play a really meaningful role in it with respect to creating incentivization for that. While we're doing that, I think we have to create affordability for families, and so there's a lot to do in that regard in California. I think nationally, but I think immediate opportunities to me strike related to the things that hit families' bottom line. So insurance
Yeah.
costs, a lot to be done there to maintain a longitudinally sort of risk pools in such a way as to work in conjunction with the insurance industry to hopefully maintain good options, and and keep people in insurance pools, and enforce insurers to have longer term participation as well, and doing so hopefully bring insurance costs down. Additionally, utilities largely in
Yeah.
California have monopolies, and there isn't a current incentive to really be thoughtful about consumer pricing, and we need to create a system that's going to move us towards better controls on utility costs for families. Certainly, there's
Yeah.
home costs,
Yeah.
not to mention uh, energy pricing and all of these other issues that affect real individuals and homes. So
Yeah.
there's more, but those to name a few. In terms of, you mentioned small businesses, that matters to me a great deal as well. So for me, it's about trying to increase access to potential capital for small businesses and small business owners,
Yeah.
particularly. improve the efficiency of the regulatory environment, and just really try to help entrepreneurs grow businesses that will create jobs in those communities. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm fundamentally a believer that if you're creating the right opportunities and removing obstacles for people to want to invest back in their community as small business owners, you're facilitating an economy that's going to bring jobs about for the rest of the folks in the community as well. So that matters
Yeah.
a great deal. So yeah, my economic sort of lens as a small business person myself is really grounded in those sort of ideas. Like, how do we make things better for the household, and how do we make things
Yeah.
better for the small business? If we do those things really well, I think we're going to get somewhere more meaningful. And then the last thing I'll say from this district uniquely, as somebody that served as a California film commissioner, is ongoing and investment in our tax credit system to incentivize the entertainment
Yeah.
industry to come back, well, to either stay home or come
Yeah.
back and return to the California area. That's been a challenge for the last couple of decades, losing entertainment activity and jobs. And we've got to make sure that we're creating an environment where it's never
Yeah.
forgotten that this part of Los Angeles is really the place where it all started in terms of the American entertainment industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You were also talking about public safety. If you can tell me more about that specific issue.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I spent, 2 terms as a city council member dealing with public safety. I'd like to use the term public safety more broadly. I think traditionally people think of public
Yeah.
safety as just community policing, maybe uniquely. To me, public safety means a lot more than that. That means it also means, emergency preparedness for communities in the environment of
Yeah.
climate change. It also means utilizing new models to support our police officers in the communities with social workers and
Yeah.
resources that are going to contribute um, to thoughtful preventative action when it comes to creating safety for an environment. And so I think there's a lot of challenges. Obviously, you may have followed. In fact, in my own community, we've had these significant landslides over the last several
Yeah.
years that have accelerated, and I took measures to declare local emergencies, to invest deeply in wells and the removal of the water that's sort of causing the slide.
Yeah.
We've worked hard to try to get utilities to continue to maintain service. At times that's been disrupted. And in fact, multiple utilities have unexpectedly left hundreds of our homeowners, in peril at times due to the significance of the movement. So there's real
Yeah.
emergency preparedness issues. Some are preventative, some are response. In this district, we have the Pacific Palisades as well, which is north uh,
Yeah.
of the Palos Verdes Preserve, where I've been serving my local capacity. And as I'm sure you followed, there were significant fires and tragedy there more
Yeah.
than a
The,
year.
the wildfires. Yeah.
And the recovery and response to that, of course, is critical. But I also feel that this is prompting us to think, how are we investing, more long term when it comes to protecting and maintaining open space,
Yeah.
being thoughtful about where we build our communities and rebuild. And part of that is the community planning component that we have to just be really thoughtful as a state about as we move forward.
Okay. Being in LA, I have to ask of, ICE and federal government involvement in states' rights and state based issues. That right now with Trump acting through executive orders instead of and getting more powers to himself instead of uh, getting Congress and the Senate and of course the states to be able to get this sort of to have more policies and powers. What do you think about that, and how's that making an impact on your communities?
Oh yeah, very much appreciate that question. I think I want to answer it initially, at least in two ways. One is I grew up in Washington State, working amongst farm workers and orchards and
Yeah,
packing warehouse, and so I have unique. This sort of issue hits unique for me because of my experiences there, as well as leading a nonprofit that worked with farm workers as well. So to me, there's an underlying sort of moral issue, and as a country that I believe represents hope and opportunity, I want to make sure that that continues to be how we define ourselves, and part of that is supporting sort of the immigrant pathways and the immigrant experience. We're essentially a country of immigrants largely, so that's
yeah,
that's really an underlying and important issue. As a local elected, there, I think you capture it with the way you asked the question, which is there is a real fundamental question about local, federalism in general and local, state, and federal partnerships when it comes
yeah,
to public safety. So there's obviously the the concern, and I can't think of a better word than sort of the disgust by which ICE has fundamentally sort of changed its approach to doing immigration-based work. It's just fundamentally different than it's been historically under both
yeah,
Republican and Democratic presidents. And so it's a shift. It's an unneeded and unnecessary shift, and it's a dangerous precedent for our communities. And fundamentally, as a local leader, I can tell you, in working conjunction with cities and our counties and our states, it
yeah,
isn't welcome because we don't, public safety apparatus of those levels of government don't need the participation of ICE, fundamentally to continue to maintain, community safety. So
yeah,
that's really critical. And the best government needs to be a collaborative government. And this, the current president's approach to immigration is anything but collaborative. It's
yeah,
unilateral action, and it's the face of the leadership within the respective communities that are being impacted by it, and it creates a very adversarial and unnecessary and heightened and tensioned environment that leads to really bad outcomes, and we just need to change course immediately.
yeah. Okay, well, the last question would be about environmental issues and, of course, environmental policies and climate change and all these things, how they are impacting your community and your district.
Yes, I mean it's a big topic. I think there's
Yeah,
multiple areas that I'll just briefly touch on. As somebody that's been a mayor of a community with a large preserve, I am a big believer in the investment and protection of open space. You know, Many of our communities in the United States, and particularly in this beautiful area of Southern California, we have built out lots of areas, lots of communities, and we have more limited sort of open space areas that I think just need thoughtful management and thoughtful protection. So I'm proud of what I've
yeah,
been able to do respected to that, and how the development of habitat planning, that recognized by the federal government, the state, for instance, in my own community, how we bought actually private lands and converted them into public lands and expanded trail networks and all of those things. So part of my answer
yeah,
to your questions is I think California needs to continue to, and this is all intertwined with the emergency preparedness component of active management of open space. But
yeah,
if we're doing that and we're doing it well, we get to enjoy it as well as protect it. So, and then of course all the great wildlife and floral life that comes along with that. I will also say, part of the environment is sort of at the micro level, like how individuals and businesses think about
yeah,
how they're going to utilize energy. And so at one point early in my volunteerism, I was the chair of an environmental committee that worked on action planning in a small city that really focused on how do we create incentives for residents? How do we create incentives for small businesses to go as green as possible? So I'm always interested in creating tools and incentives for both. The business side is none of it's easy, but I would say that's a little easier to tackle initially. Getting people to change their individual behavior is, the multi-generational
Yeah,
challenge for
yeah,
all of us. But I think the younger generation of today is really leading us, there. So that's certainly important to
yeah,
me. And then I guess finally, it's a question of how do we get to a place of less reliance on, well, I should say the optimization rather of new and alternative energies. Not an easy pathway. I think California has to lead the
yeah,
way, but it's not. It's something we have to be very thoughtful about in working because we have an economy based in the utilization of current energy, and so I think we need to have a real partnership with our current energy partners in order
yeah,
to sort of mark out our milestones and pathway. I'll give you a specific example, like a electric vehicle. So,
yeah,
there's been, at least the creation of electric vehicles, but the problem is, particularly for our lower economic brackets in our area, there's really no access to
yeah. They're
and
very expensive. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Affordability is an issue, and also
yeah,
just access to charging stations, particularly in our low income communities, just doesn't exist with the kind of capacity required for there to be a fundamental shift. So it's just we have to sit down together and ask ourselves real questions about, okay, we have this goal of less reliance and more significant investment in alternative energy, wind, solar, electric. um, how do we work with all the industries and get there and do it in a way that it's not disruptive to the
yeah,
economy, to the jobs, and working our way towards a greener future.
yeah. And I guess, coastal protection should be also very, very important. I'm also from the coast, so I know it's a very important, it's very relevant in where I live. So I guess that it's a different kind of stage, but I guess that it's something very important too in Southern California, I guess.
Yes, it is. And I think, I'm proud that we're a leader in many ways for our country.
Yeah,
We often have policies that we're the first to do it, and then other states follow along over time. I'm proud of that. So I do feel like we have to, chart the path of the future here in California
yeah.
for the sake of the United States and the way the United States overall approaches an environmentally friendly future.
All right. Well, great. Thank you very much for answering all my questions. It's been great.
Absolutely, Lorraine. I appreciate what